In other words, you want to come and learn more than...
Yes, of course, I need to learn from you, James, absolutely. A boy who can't get basic physics right, basic chemistry right, show any appreciation of the epistemological standards of science whatsoever, and who has a very, very serious ego problem. A boy, James, like you, who would not pass my 101 papers in chemistry, biology, physics, organ systems, physiology, any of that. And you'd be one of those students I would exclude from resitting because it would be unethical for us to take your money again to allow you to resit because, son, you have no hope of ever passing. The reason for that, James, is because you are unable to learn. The reason for that, James, is because your mouth is open when it should be shut and your ears are shut when they should be open. You should understand that when you are talking to me, if you ever have the testicular fortitude to do so, son, that you're talking to a person with a vastly superior level of knowledge and experience in this field in particular than you have, who will absolutely run rings around you. Ergo, you should be in learning posture with me, son.
And I'm going to show you how physiology works.
Oh, yeah, James is going to show me how physiology works. Well, anyone that's watched this video to this point, James, I think has already got a clear idea who it is that understands how physiology works. Because, James, you think we're producing acid, which we're not. You think that fluids contain hydrogen ions, which they don't. You can't understand the difference between who's making a positive claim and who isn't. You're a liar, you're a coward, and you've got a very serious ego problem. Sorry about that, not sorry. What's next?
So how have you proven me wrong?
Well, James, you said we produce acid. No, we don't. Fact. You said we produce ammonia. No, we don't. Fact. You said our stomach contains hydrogen ions. No, it doesn't, James. Fact. You said sodium ions can't affect the pH. Yes, they can, James. Fact. You said chloride ions can't affect the pH, James. Yes, they can, James. Fact. You said if we eat nothing but muscle meat and associated fat for years and years and years and years, we can absolutely expect a problem. You haven't established that posit, James. Fact. So I'd say all in all, James, I've proven you wrong. Hello, darlings. Did you miss me? I hope you did. I missed you. I couldn't help myself. I also can't help myself responding to people who are wrong on the interwebs, like James DiNicolantonio ideas here. He made a little video about 11 months ago called Animal Protein Equals an Acid Load, ... What to do about it, and
why Bart Kay is wrong. Here's why.
Okay, James, why don't you tell me why I'm wrong, in your mind? And I'll correct you as to why it is that you've got it wrong completely and that I'm not wrong. And in fact, it's you that's demonstrably absolutely wrong from first principles of physics, from first principles of chemistry, and from absolutely unassailable statements of fact as we understand them. And how it is that your problem, actually, James, is an ego problem and that you can't admit that you've actually been completely shown up in this field. Look, you have a fantastic publication record. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. What you don't have is the first clue about acid-base balance, aqueous chemistry, clearly, or basic physics. Not to mention, you seem to have an extremely, extremely limited knowledge of or ability to apply the disciplines of the epistemology of science, which we'll get to as we need to. But in the meantime, let's hear all about why
Bart Kay is wrong.
Go on, James.
Okay.
I'll just say this once today because I've said it quite a few times in recent days and it really does aggravate me and I get quite hot under the collar about it. What's with this ridiculous smacky noise that people are making with their mouth? It's painful. It's irritating. It's aggravating in the extreme. It adds nothing. Can we just stop that, please, everybody? Okay, let's move on.
So let's discuss the whole Bart Kay situation.
That'd be great, James, if you'd come and face me like a man, grow a set, in other words. Come and have a discussion with me face to face about these issues. And then we could put this whole thing to bed and you could stop being such a child. But unfortunately, there are several things preventing you from doing that, the largest of which being your very, very serious ego problem, in my opinion. The fact that you can't seem to cope with or deal with the fact that in regards to this issue about this acid-base thing and all of this that you've been going on about, that you've been shown up, you've been run rings around by a vastly superior intellect. That's not a judgment on you, James. It's just a fact. Sadly for you, you've come up against someone in me that actually has one of those intellects that's at really, really one of the very hard ends of the bell-shaped curve, in fact. My IQ is significantly higher than it needs to be to get me into Mensa if I wanted to. But I'm a bit like Marx. I wouldn't really want to be a member of any club that would have me, tee-hee. Anywho, let's hear why I'm wrong, and I'll correct you where you get it wrong. And it'll be fun for everybody, except you, James. That's the name of the game, though, of course.
I had put out a video on how basically when you consume a high amount of animal protein, how that leads to an acid load in the body.
Except it doesn't, though, James. An acid takes the form H, in brackets N, a number of H's, whatever that be, and then A minus, which denotes the conjugate anion. The kidneys do not excrete acids, James. That's a fact. It's a fact of physics. The particular acid that you're referring to that you think is the problem here is sulfuric acid, which takes the form H2SO4. The kidneys do not excrete any H2SO4. None at all, James. Why not? Well, because the thing that determines whether an acid is in the form HNA minus or whether it's just A minus, and then there's some H plus so-called to account for. We'll deal with that later. That is determined by the pH of the solution in which that acid is added. It's a physiological fact. Every acid has a pK value, or a K value if you like, and that denotes how much of that acid is in the form HNA minus together, and how much of it is just A minus with the H's to account for in some way later, which I'll get to, as I said. If the pK value of an acid, as you can find in any textbook you like on chemistry, if that K value is more than 2 points lower than the pH of the solution concerned, then that so-called acid is always found 100% in the form A minus with the H plus to deal with in some way, not H2SO4, i.e. not an acid. That is a fact, James, a fact of physics, whether you like that fact or not. I understand that it's a convention just to refer to it as acid. It's not, though. A spade is a spade. An anion is not an acid. So there's your first error. The error of being not clear, not accurate in your description of phenomena. Competent scientists, James, are accurate in their description of phenomena. Words are important. It is important to describe things as they are. And with that in mind, there is no acid to be excreted. There is no acid load. There is a load of sulfate to be excreted, but that's another issue, which we can deal with at another time. That comes up in this video as to even what you are suggesting the mechanism is by which that's a problem for the kidneys in some way, because it still isn't.
Now, I had also shown how if you are excreting a certain amount of acid,
which you're still not, James. There is no acid being excreted still, as per my description I've just given you.
how that can basically overwhelm the kidney's capacity.
In what sense, James? In what way? How? Give us the mechanism of that. Shall we wait for that? Just saying excreting acid, which you don't, overwhelms the kidneys, which it doesn't, James, doesn't make it true. It isn't true. Still, sorry about that.
To eliminate that acid, how
You're still not eliminating any acid, James. None at all, still.
numerous balance studies have
Balance studies. Numerous balance studies. If you want to talk about numerous studies, James, what you need to do is bring up numerous studies on the screen and analyze numerous studies competently and in depth, talk about their strength, their weaknesses, their limitations, their flaws, and their foibles. Just saying,
Studies show.
doesn't show anything, James. Sorry. That's not how scientists behave. Competent ones, anyway. Also, a competent scientist, when he's challenged on a matter of fact, fronts up to the person that's challenging him and has a discussion backwards and forwards about that. Live on camera. No reason why not. We're both doing social media. Neither one of us, apparently, is spending much time doing academic work anymore. So let's work in the media that we're in. That's the live edutainment sector. And let's deal with your fallacious nonsense. So park your ego, which is clearly out of control some, and come and talk to a well-trained, intelligent scientist like myself about why it is that you've got this so wrong and how it is that you've got this so wrong. So point one, are we excreting acid? No, we're not. Not at all. That is a fact, an unassailable fact of physics as we understand that currently. It hasn't changed since I've been alive. That's a fact, and it probably won't because we know how this works. We are satisfied that we have this perfectly under control as to what it is that determines whether or not an acid is in its acid form or whether it's in what people parsimoniously refer to as the dissociated form. They're not the same thing. Describing them as if they are the same thing is fallacious, James. Sorry.
shown that in over 50% of people, if you are excreting around 40 milliequivalents of acid per
But you're still not, James. You're still not excreting any acid whatsoever. That's still a fact. No amount of saying otherwise will change that fact. It remains a fact. Still.
per day, there is some retention.
Retention of what, James? What are we retaining?
Of that acid. So
No, there's still no acid in biological aqueous solutions in the human body of, in the case of the one you're talking about, sulfuric acid, because it has a pK value which is more than 2 points lower than the pH of the urine through its entire physiological range, James. Still a fact. Sorry. No acid.
in other words, balance studies have shown
You said that, remember? And you haven't cited any balance studies at all. Neither have you explained to your audience, who would have to be even stupider than you are to listen to you, James, what a balance study even is. Neither have you actually explained what the limitations and flaws and foibles of such studies are. Okay, so this is not going well for you so far. I hope it gets better. I really do.
from the Lehman Group and the
Okay, so you cited one purely by just saying the name of the group. You haven't actually still cited the study.
Lennon Group back in the 1960s. That
All right, okay, so a study from the 60s, yeah.
if you excrete, about 39 milliequivalents of acid,
But you still don't, James. Sorry, I'm going to correct you every single time because it remains a falsehood. You do not excrete acid. This isn't hard to understand as a kids. Have you all got this already? My audience, of course, James, is vastly more intelligent than your audience, so I would suspect my audience to get this much more rapidly. Nonetheless, please do, anybody, comment under the video at this point. Do you understand what I have said? There is a thing called a pK value that determines how much of an acid is in the acid form and how much is in the so-called dissociated form, i.e. not the same thing. And if it's 2 points lower than the local pH, then it's 100% dissociated. The pK value of sulfuric acid is definitely more than 2 points lower than the local pH in the entire physiological range of the urine. We're done, James. Sorry. There is no acid. Okay? Please do, folks, comment. Let me know that that's comprehensible, even for you non-scientists, folks, that are reasonably intelligent consumers of my material. That'd be great.
Around half of the population will be retaining some of that acid.
No, still not acid, James. Still not.
And the retention goes up and up.
The retention of what, James? Because there's no acid still. What's being retained? Sulfate? Well, that's okay. Sulfate plays multiple useful roles in the human body, James. So what's the issue with that?
So Bart needs to understand how physiology actually works.
Oh, right. Okay. So says a bloke that doesn't know the difference between an acid and an anion. Okay. Good-o, James.
And how basically consuming dietary acid loads can overwhelm the system.
Yeah, just because you say dietary acid loads, James, doesn't mean they exist. They still don't. And just because you say they overwhelm the system, James, that doesn't make that true either. It still isn't true. Sulfate doesn't cause a problem. Please explain the problem of having sulfate in your system. Please explain what the mechanism is that would be a problem by which excreting sulfate at the kidneys, the very thing that it's designed to do, among other things, would be a problem for it. No? Okay. Is this going up any flagpoles yet?
I also showed about a dozen human clinical studies.
Yeah, just because you say clinical studies, James, doesn't mean anything, because you haven't actually cited any clinical studies here in this video. This video needs to stand alone. If you're trying to make an argument that people should take you seriously and not me in this field of endeavour, of which I do have quite some sophistication, James, quite some level of knowledge and applications and things in this field. This is really one of my expert areas. Absolutely. Perhaps you should actually cite some studies and then be prepared to have a discussion with me like a man, face to face, live on camera, as I said, and we can litigate those studies and work out what's wrong with them. Because they've all got lots of things wrong with them, by the way. Or am I just being a problem here because I'm not prepared to accept your inviolate canon because you say so? Oh, that's a problem for you, James. You're probably used to bullying people into your accepting your ridiculous opinions. Perhaps the mouth clicking helps with that, and the high-pitched, whiny tone of your voice, maybe. I don't know.
One of them was the Bellevue study, which...
Okay, so you've just named another study, but you haven't actually cited it. Neither are you going to actually analyse that study in any degree of critical analysis, are you? You're just going to say what that study absolutely proves, which is going to be your next mistake.
Was a metabolic ward study of 4
Oh, well, it must be good then if it's a metabolic ward study. My bad.
months and then went out to a full year. Now remember, Bart has claimed, this is a positive claim, that all you have to do is eat meat and the associated fat and you will be fine.
No, I've never said that at all, James. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie. That's pathetic, desperate cope, James. I've said several things about the apparent ideal diet for a human being. In fact, in reality, in this reality in which we find ourselves, not the James DiNicolantonio no nuts reality, the actual reality in which we live. Here's what I actually have said. I've said that the diet consisting purely of the muscle meat and associated fat of large ruminant animals is a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, as demonstrated quite clearly by more than 110,000 years of stable isotope testing. That's a fact. That's what the evidence the anthropological evidence shows us. I've also said that there is absolutely no acceptable inference and absolutely no experimental cause and effect evidence, of controlled science that can suggest that such a diet will lead or is even likely to lead to any long-term health issue, complaint, or compromise of any kind over any period of time in human beings. This kind of study simply does not exist, and it does not exist for a number of reasons, not least of which being that you can't do such studies because ethics committees really don't like that kind of thing. Neither is it practical or financially possible anyway. Who wants to give up their whole life, to live in a lab and be a lab rat to prove something according to the acceptable standards of scientific epistemology, cause and effect, inference? Okay, that's what I have said. Any other colouring on what you want people to believe I have said, James, is a falsehood. And it just shows your lack, really, your destitution, your cope, or your attempted cope. Let's stick to the facts. Let's stick to what I actually did say.
However,
I won't say it again.
you cannot say that. That is not.
Well, I didn't say it. So that's okay, James. Still, I didn't say it. No number of times of repeating the lie, the falsehood, that I said something that I did not say will make it so that I said it, because I didn't. Still. Listen, James, son, I have been constructing the arguments that I publicly put forward to people for probably at least 2/3 of your lifespan, your total lifespan. Okay? I have had far more sophisticated, far more intelligent, far more accomplished individuals than yourself attempt to take shots at me over the years. Son, not one of them's got it done. Why not? Because I'm very, very particular about the words I choose, the things I say. My arguments are absolutely unassailable in fact, as we understand the facts to be. That's on purpose. And you do well to learn that. However, as I've kind of alluded to, the problem with that for you, I would suggest, is that you don't understand that you have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, and that is the proportion in which they ought to be used, James. Okay? You will never learn anything while you are mouthing off about what you think you know. That's just a hint. Do with that as you will. I hope it helps you in your life at some point somehow, because you really need some help getting over this ego problem that you've got, and you need to understand the difference between opinions and fairly well-established facts, first principles. Things based in the absolute cornerstones of the scientific epistemology as we understand the universe to be, based on basic physics and basic chemistry as we understand them. Because you're nowhere near a grasp of that, clearly. I'm sorry. Again, just the facts on that. It's not a judgment upon you as a person. I do have an opinion about you as a person, but that's for another day.
Not a positive claim that can be supported.
That's right. That's why I didn't make that positive claim. See how that works? And you claiming that I made that positive claim, James, is a lie. And it only reflects poorly on you, son, not me. Because anybody can go back through any number of my videos and play those videos back any number of times they like, and they will find that what I have said is what I just reported that I have said. I have never made claims about what will or will not be okay for any given person over any period of time. We all die at some point, James, of something. I would never have said it'll be fine, because it won't be. You're going to die, James, at the end of your life, just like me. Just like everybody else. Okay? What's next?
Simply because we know that the Bellevue study, the 4-month metabolic ward study, where they were just eating meat, a little bit of organs, and the associated fat, led to negative calcium balance.
Okay, so you said led to there. Led to is a cause and effect claim, which can't be supported really because there were degrees of freedom at play there that were not controlled in that study. Even if that were not so, and this were an absolute slam dunk cause and effect over a 4-month period, what can that tell us about 4 months and 1 day? 4 months and 2 days? 8 months? A year? 2 years? 5, 8, or 80 years? The answer, James, is absolutely nothing. It is scientifically inappropriate and epistemologically unacceptable for you to extrapolate the findings of a study, any study, beyond its tenure. In this case, 4 months and an extension under certain circumstances to 1 year, in which case the only statements you can make about what the uptake of all of that is what might occur in a similar cohort of people, possibly over the exact same period of time in the future, should that study be repeated. Nothing else. No period of time longer than that. The problem, James, is that you're making claims about what people can expect to occur over multiple decades. That's a positive claim. That's lacking in support. That's what puts you in error in this respect. That's what's got you into trouble here. That and your complete lack of comprehension of basic physics and basic chemistry concepts, as we'll get to in this study in some depth as well, quite clearly. So let's make some progress on that.
So it was this was Anderson and Stephenson, who's, basically a famous doctor, Arctic explorer, etc.
That's right. It's completely irrelevant. Just tell us about the study, James.
Where they consumed what Bart is saying is completely fine.
Again, I did not say that. Again, that is still a lie, James. It will not stop being a lie. No matter how many times you say it, it is not true still.
Meat, some organs, the associated...
No, son. I have never promoted the consumption of organs. Not once, ever. Another lie.
Fat, and they were in negative calcium balance.
According to whom, James, on the basis of what? Let's analyse their measurement techniques, shall we? No, you don't want to analyse the study at all. You just want to say the study absolutely proved Bart Kay wrong because you feel like saying that. Sorry, son. Not good enough. If you want to litigate that study with me, let's do it face to face, live on camera. And let's also all accept the absolute fact that epistemologically acceptable disciplines of science preclude you from extrapolating that finding to 1 single day longer than the 1 year period. You do not know what will have occurred beyond that. There is no way to know. Okay? Sorry about that. Your entire argument falls flat on its face because you don't have the sophistication to put a decent argument together. And you're not used to being challenged, I would suspect.
After 4 months, they were still somewhere between minus 175 to minus 250 milligrams of calcium being lost out of the body every single day.
According to whom? On the basis of what? Still, let's look at this measurement technique.
Now, you would have to show me a study that proves that all of that calcium gets completely shut off.
No, James, you don't get to demand anything from me whatsoever. I've made no positive claims. You are the one making the positive claim, suggesting that we can expect a problem over multiple decades if we continue to eat nothing but meat and associated animal fat. Sadly for you, James, the facts of the matter are no such studies exist. that can infer such a thing as likely. Ergo, you're in the wrong still. And the only way for you to attempt to save face is to lie about what you say I've said, and to misrepresent the actual underpinning physics and actual underpinning chemistry behind all of this, while waving your hands around and making aggravating clicky noises with your mouth. Will not change the facts, not one jot some.
Because if it doesn't, then you can't say that it's completely fine.
Which I still didn't say. Ergo, I'm not required to provide any evidence of anything whatsoever. What you will find, James, though, is every single argument I make in this video and elsewhere is always underpinned by its application and its underpinnings from basic, accepted, first principles. Okay? You need to keep your eye on the ball on this, because if you're not up with the play, son, you're going to end up in the crossfire, as you have done. Because what you actually have in your destitute little brain, sorry, son, is a hackneyed old model of chemistry, an explanation of the phenomena, which is lazy at best, outright incorrect in several respects, and completely out with the basic fundamental laws of physics as we understand them at this time. Purely because you do not have the resources and the wherewithal to even think critically about this, and even, well, frankly, son, even understand what it is I'm saying. You're about 50 IQ points short of being able to understand it, I would suspect. I'm sorry about that. Once again, that's not a judgment. It's just a statement of fact. So let's get on to that so that I can show you up again.
So in other words, you have no evidence at all.
I've never claimed to have any evidence at all of the thing that I never said that you've claimed that I said, James. Okay, so no points for you there whatsoever. Ridiculous, pathetic, childish cope, ego-driven nonsense. Let's get back to the facts, shall we?
To prove that it's completely fine to eat.
Again, I still didn't say that.
Meat and associated fat.
I still didn't say that.
You also state, oh, well, this person has been on carnivore for 70 years.
Well, no, in fact, it's 67 as far as I'm aware. If we're talking about Maggie the Rancher, maybe 68 by now. It's a long time anyway, James. What's 2 years between friends? But once again, you're claiming I said something I didn't say. And actually, when I say Maggie the Rancher has been a carnivore for 67 or 68 years, that's because, as far as I'm aware, James, that is a fact. So what's your point?
Are they consuming a calcium supplement?
I suggest not, but you can ask her if you like, James.
Are they consuming a lot of dairy and hitting a high amount of calcium?
Well, how do we know, James? Why don't you ask her?
Remember, you said just meat and associated fat. You did not say that you also should be consuming dairy.
I said meat and associated fat is a species-appropriate, species-specific diet that is ostensibly almost all that we ate for at least the last 110,000 years, x the last 12,000 or so post-agrarian revolution. And I have said repeatedly that there is no need whatever to intake dairy products. I stand by that. There is no evidence that you do. There is also no evidence that a person, any given person, is likely to experience any problem whatsoever on a diet consisting of meat and animal fat. I know of at least one other character who has been doing it for 40 years. And I believe him. I've got no reason to doubt the boy. You can talk to him if you like, James. I can set that up when we have our face-to-face discussion. He can be here. You can ask him yourself. How would that be? Or would that be too threatening for you? I understand that dealing with someone with a vastly superior intellect to your own can be intimidating, James. Me, I mean. Rick's just a good old boy, the 40-year carnivore, but he'll tell you the truth about what he's been eating. He'll even tell you that 20 years ago, for a couple of weeks, he ate some plant material for about a week before he went, no, that's no good. I'm going straight back to the carnivore. So he's been ostensibly a carnivore for 40 years, and I happen to know that he doesn't take calcium supplements or much dairy. Sorry about that. So there's one example. Maybe he's one end of a bell-shaped curve, who knows? But I'm not making positive claims, James, you are. And it's you that's required to back your claims up, and you can't do it because there is no evidence extant anywhere that you can use to do so. Okay, what's next?
So you listing off one person that's been on carnivore for like 50 years.
Well, I just gave you two. I can also point you to something like in our last estimation of this, based on the audience sizes and what they're saying, I'm just accepting that what they're saying is true, because that's how you do science, apparently, about nutrition, James. You just ask people what they're eating and believe them. But anyway, there are, something like 100,000 plus individuals following the carnivore diet that have been doing that somewhere between 5 and 10 years, is the latest estimate that I'm aware of. And something like 1 million under the 5-year mark. That's still a significant period of time, isn't it? And none of them are dissolving in puddles on the floor because their bones have dissolved, James. So I'm not sure what your issue is, other than an ego problem and a severely limited intelligence quotient. Plus, a complete lack of critical thinking skills, not much self-awareness to speak of. But hey, I'm getting personal.
That they're 75 and still thriving as carnivore. Again, what is that person consuming? Are they on a multivitamin that has calcium or vitamin D? Are they consuming any dairy? We would need to know those things.
Well, not really, James, because at the end of the day, it's you that's making the positive claim that we can expect a problem, and you can't show anyone is having the kind of problem that you would expect that they would have. So it's you that's speculating mechanistically and getting the mechanistic speculation laughably wrong, because you can't actually even clearly understand basic physics and basic chemistry, which we will get to in this video. I'm not just blustering here. James is going to say some stuff about chemistry, and we're going to show him to be completely wrong in that regard. Again, demonstrably wrong, absolutely unequivocally wrong, unquestionably wrong. Okay? He's going to make a fool of himself again, so let's let him.
And then also, we have no idea where's their bone mineral density scans. No idea.
Where's the bone mineral density scans of anybody that's been eating any kind of diet for multiple decades, James, that would support your positive claim that we can expect a problem? You're the one that's required to provide evidence. You're the one making the positive claim, not me. Still, you lying about me making a positive claim doesn't mean I did. I didn't still, because I'm not as stupid as you, James. As I said, I've been doing this a very, very long time, and much smarter folks than you have tried to take a shot at me. That's why I'm very, very careful about what I actually, in fact, do say. Okay?
Idea of that. So I think that so you can't just say that is what I'm
Well, I didn't say that, James, still. No matter how many times you claim I said that, I still didn't say that.
trying to get at. Basically, he's making positive claims that...
No, I'm still not, James. No matter how many times you lie to your viewers about me making positive claims, that will not change the fact that I have not done so. Still.
That, again, meat,
James, write yourself a script before you start talking, son. And then probably the best thing that you could do is screw that script up, throw it over your shoulder, shut down your ridiculous YouTube channel, shut your ridiculous mouth, withdraw from being an online influencer, because frankly, you're repulsive and repugnant in terms of your behavior, your demeanor, the quality of your videos, the fallaciousness of the disinformation found within them, and your destitution of comprehension of basic physics and basic chemistry. Okay, you're just making a fool of yourself. It's embarrassing for you and your country, and your mum probably, and, you know, everything else. It's time for you to pull your head in, son.
That you have to eat is meat and the associated fat, and you are going to be totally fine.
Again, I did not say that still. You're not going to be totally fine, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a lifespan, however long that is, and then you're going to die, just like everybody else. Okay?
Show me the proof.
I don't need to show you any proof, James. You don't get to demand anything of me at all. I've made no positive claims, despite your repeated lie that I have made a positive claim, which I still haven't made. I'm not required to provide proof. What I do is provide arguments based on first principles of known science, chemistry and physics and stuff like that. Stuff that you clearly don't have a grasp on.
The proof. Where's the proof that...
You can ask me for proof 3 or 4 times within 3 seconds and repeat yourself over and over again, because your brain is desperately scrabbling around for the next thing you're going to say, and you're just trying to fill the void until your brain catches up with your gob. But it's not going to change any of the facts. I still don't need to provide you with a damn thing, James. Nothing whatsoever.
That the negative calcium balance stops.
I don't need to provide the proof of that, James. You need to provide the proof that it doesn't. That's the point here. You're making the positive claim, not me. You are responsible for the proof. It does not exist. Ergo, you lose. Sorry about that. Not sorry.
You would have to show me proof. So
still, no, James. I still don't have to show you proof at all of anything whatsoever, still.
I'm actually doing my due diligence here.
No, not, James. What you're doing is blowing smoke up your own anal orifice. What you're doing is trying to paint yourself out as the man here who knows everything about this, when in fact what you're doing is pointing directly, squarely and unequivocally to your destitution of competence. And you're also showing us that you're not even a decent human being, because you can't sit there and make a video about this topic without lying repeatedly. It's pathetic. It's desperate, and it reflects very, very poorly on you.
And giving people a warning and a caveat that eating the meat and associated fat, which is what you say is okay to do.
No, I still didn't, James. No. Stop lying, son.
It has been proven in a metabolic ward study.
No, nothing's been proven in any study, James. That's false. Your very existence is not proven. That's metaphysical. It's beyond the grasp of science. Okay? Don't come at me with that garbage. It's clear that you haven't even studied the philosophy of science here, because you don't even understand its limitations. Any competent scientist would refrain from making statements about absolute proof, because they understand no such thing exists. Still. Okay? Destitution, James. Pathetic hope. Ego stroking. And compensation, I would suggest, for your severely lacking testicular fortitude, that which would be required to actually front me for a discussion about science. Okay?
To lead to negative calcium balance.
Over a 1-year study with a small number of participants with very, very lax discipline at best, using a very, very questionable measurement technique, James. Those are the realities. I'm sorry, not sorry. Those are the facts. Those are the facts for you to comprehend, to understand, and to represent accurately to the public when you make a video about these things. Not to tell lies about what I have said and to claim the higher ground on the basis of some inviolate canon that you believe exists. It's not an inviolate canon, James. It's a poorly conducted, ill-disciplined, small-scale study over medium short term. It does not establish your posit being that we can expect a problem over multiple decades if we foolishly eat nothing but meat and animal fat. That's the positive claim you have made, and you are required to support that claim with evidence. Sadly for you, it still doesn't exist, and you lose this argument. We are done. Still. Sorry. Not sorry.
In other words, you want to come and learn more than
Yes, of course, I need to learn from you, James. Absolutely. A boy who can't get basic physics right, basic chemistry right, show any appreciation of the epistemological standards of science whatsoever, and who has a very, very serious ego problem. A boy, James, like you, who would not pass my 101 papers in chemistry, biology, physics, organ systems, physiology, any of that. And you'd be one of those students I would exclude from resitting because it would be unethical for us to take your money again to allow you to resit because, son, you have no hope of ever passing. The reason for that, James, is because you are unable to learn. The reason for that, James, is because your mouth is open when it should be shut and your ears are shut when they should be open. You should understand that when you are talking to me, if you ever have the testicular fortitude to do so, son, that you're talking to a person with a vastly superior level of knowledge and experience in this field in particular than you have, who will absolutely run rings around you. Ergo, you should be in learning posture with me, son. But your ego won't allow that. That is why you would be excluded from resitting, and you would basically flunk out of the course. Okay? I'm sorry about that. Those are just the facts. What's next?
just eat meat and associated fat, you come to my channel.
No, you don't go to James's channel if you want to learn anything. No, you don't. Not if you have any ability to ascertain or determine who it is that's likely to be credible. It's tough for people, I understand that, because James holds a good level of qualification. He has a terminal research degree, and they're called that for a reason. He has a number of peer-reviewed publications in particular fields, which is impressive. Well done, James. That's great. So people would be excused for thinking that he's credible. However, the thing that people need to learn to do, and it's the thing that I teach people on my channel, James, the intelligent people that are consumers of my channel, is that every single thing you hear from everybody, including myself, needs to be subjected in the minds of the people hearing those messages to a sense check against basic first principles. And that's what we'll be doing in the second half of this video when you actually get to start talking about any of the actual meat and potatoes here. Okay, so you've already got one thing wrong, and we've established that. You've said that there is an acid load. Okay, no, there isn't. Fact, end of discussion. You lose. You've said we're excreting acid in our kidneys. No, we're not, James. Fact. Unassailable fact. Still, no matter how many times you say otherwise, we're done with that. You lose again. What's next?
Because I'm going to actually get into the caveats, the nuances of all
Yes, get into the nuances, James. We love it. We love the nuances here.
this. And that's what's important.
Yes, that is what's important, and that's why you should do that. And I know you're about to start getting into that, so please do, so that I can correct you where you've got it wrong. Which, by the way, spoiler, kiddies, it's going to be everywhere.
So show me the proof that the calcium shuts off.
I don't need to show you the proof of that, James, still. No amount of demanding that from me makes it necessary for me to produce that for you. At all. I haven't made any positive claims. You have. You produce the evidence, but it doesn't. Okay? That's the rules. That's how this works.
First of all, show me that proof.
Again, no matter how many times you ask for it, you're still going to get the same answer. No, James, I don't need to provide you with a damn thing. Not at all. Other than the facts based in first principles, and that's what I'm doing here.
Now, I had also shown many studies looking at the...
Okay, cite them, James. Many studies. Cite them. Otherwise, stop saying many studies. No. Okay, that's just noise. And if you're going to cite many studies, be prepared to defend every one of them in depth, no matter how long that takes. We'll go through them verbally, live on camera, you and I, and I'll show you what's wrong with them. Any studies you want to bring forward, that's fine.
The bone mineral density and the mineral content.
Measured how, James? Measured how?
Of the Inuit.
Oh, goodness gracious. The Inuit. Okay. So you want to say things about the Inuit? Great. To which other population can we cut and paste anything that you're going to say about the Inuit? Oh, okay. Well, we're done with the Inuit then, aren't we? Because the Inuit, James, are a particular population of people that up until relatively recently were quite isolated from the rest of humanity, right up there at the top of the world, living in, well, basically about the harshest conditions a human being can possibly live, living about the hardest lives a human being can possibly live, in the coldest environment imaginable. There are all sorts of degrees of freedom on those particular population, those people, that mean that they're not representative of anybody else. So nothing you're going to say here is going to be of any value or utility here whatsoever.
Which was in men over the age of 40 was about 15% less bone mineral content compared to Caucasians.
Right, and so how many degrees of freedom exist between Inuit men over 40 and Caucasians, whatever that means, James, other than diet? Any number. Confounds, covariates, collinearities. You learn about those in the first half an hour of your first undergraduate degree, James. They're the things that make it impossible, epistemologically unacceptable and wrong for you to claim causality on the basis of association. What school did you go to, James? Did they not teach you that in the first half an hour? Correlation does not equal causality? Pretty poor school. Would seem that your PhD has been issued by a school that failed utterly to teach you one of the very, very most basic first tenets of science there, James. Whoopsie daisy, schoolboy error. Oh dear. Sorry about that, not sorry.
And in women, it was up to 30% less.
Yeah, same argument, exactly the same argument.
Bone mineral content. They were also said to consume anywhere from 500 to 2,500 milligrams of calcium per day in their diet.
They were said to. Were you there? Did you watch? Did you observe? No? Oh, okay.
And that they were not vitamin D deficient. In those.
According to whom, on the basis of what, James? Who's to say what's vitamin D deficient? And would the same thing apply to someone that lives in the Arctic Circle than someone who doesn't in that regard? No? Okay, well, we're done with that too. What's next?
Studies as well. So
pointless noise, good. Right, can we get to some actual science at any stage, James? Or do you just want to show your destitution of scientific competence for another half an hour or something?
You have also a population that, and these were in the older Inuit, and this was published in 1970 on Point Hope and Point Barrow. Point Hope, those Inuit were consuming a traditional.
Seriously, son, write yourself a script. It's patently obvious that, like, even you're shocked by what comes out of your mouth next. Even you don't know what it's going to be. Okay, get some organisation together, for goodness sake.
Diet, and certainly the people that were studied that were over 40 years old, which since that paper was published in 1970, if they were...
Yeah, great. Lots of things are associated with lots of things, aren't they, James? Like the sale of ice creams and sunburn, they're quite closely associated. Does that mean we deal with the sunburn scourge by outlawing ice cream? How about drownings in swimming pools as that associates to the release of movies starring Nicolas Cage? There might be some causality there, who knows? But I don't think so. What about the intake of polyunsaturated fat-based margarines with the divorce rate, James? Again, that might be causal, who knows? But it wouldn't seem so, does it? Would it? Sorry about that. Excuse me. I'm sorry, it's just that dealing with James DiNicolantonio, no ideas here, reduces my IQ by 50 points every time. And I'm still 50 points ahead of him. Anyway, carry on, James. Tell us more about associations that mean nothing.
Over 40 years old would have been born at least 1930, but some of them born in 1900, so certainly consuming...
Oh, for goodness sake, James. This is clearly just bluster because you're just desperately scrabbling around for what you're going to say next. Can we get to the science, please?
A traditional diet as well, from that perspective, for most of their life, if not all of their life, showed that they had...
I can't help myself. It really is irritating, isn't it, kids? That ridiculous noise, that mouth noise. Really is, one of the most aggravating things in the world.
significantly lower bone mineral
I know I said I wasn't going to mention it more than once. There you go, I lied.
content. And so that's another cautionary note.
The cautionary notes are fine, James, if you want to couch them as cautionary notes. If you want to disclaim your statement by saying, well, look, we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen to any given person over any period of time as that relates to any dietary intervention whatsoever, mostly because we have no data on that, and also because of degrees of freedom that are uncontrolled, like covariates, confounds, collinearities, and such like that, that render it impossible for us to make such prognostic statements. But that's not what you did, is it, James? You said, if you, me, Auntie Floss, whoever, eats a diet consisting purely of the muscle meat and fat of animals, we can expect severe problems in later life with osteoporosis and etc., based on a small-scale, poorly designed, ill-disciplined study over a medium short term of 1 year or less, which is completely epistemologically unacceptable, James, still. No matter how many times you say otherwise, no matter how many times you say that you have all of these balanced studies to make it sound like there's actual science behind what you're saying, when there still isn't, James, it doesn't change any of the facts still. But let's get to the chemistry, because that's the best bit.
Another cautionary note, too, is looking at the bones of the extinct Inuit.
The extinct Inuit. Who are they, James? Who are the extinct Inuit?
Showed many compression vertebral fractures.
Gosh, I wonder if they had really, really hard lives, hunting huge, powerful animals, pushing boats through pounding seas, and, did they have rough, tough, hard lives in a very, very cold environment at all, James, I wonder? Shall we move on?
As well. So in this, the studies also indicated a much higher rate of osteoporosis based on the low bone mineral content of the Inuit.
According to whom, on the basis of what? Still.
So another...
And degrees of freedom, many, many degrees of freedom. Could the cold have had anything to do with it? Who knows, James? Could the hard lives actually have led to more wear and tear, leading to skeletons that appear more osteoporotic than you might expect? You'd have thought the Wolff's Law would have had the opposite result, perhaps. But we don't know, James. This is the thing. This is mechanistic speculation. There are no studies that can support your claim still. And your short-term balance studies or medium short-term balance studies will not do. That's not me being unreasonable. Those are the standards of the epistemology of science. Not my rules, son. These rules were put in place some 2,500 years ago. That's a bit before my time too. Okay? What is next? Goodness.
A note of caution, which is...
Yeah, a note of caution is still fine, James, but that's still not how you're couching it. You're still suggesting that you have
Absolutely proven Bart Kay wrong.
But you still haven't, son. Sorry.
From my channel, you're getting much more context than what Bart would like you to know.
That's absolute nonsense, James. The people that watch my channel, I would suggest, are probably at least 30 or 40 IQ points ahead of your audience, and I would suggest I'm at least 50 ahead of you. Sorry about that. I mean, you can't even get basic chemistry and physics correct, which I know I keep saying. You're going to prove it when you finally get to it, so let's get on with that.
Bart just wants to basically get clicks, like he says.
Yes, absolutely. All I'm here for is clicks. Clicks make my whole life. That's what it's about. It's about the clicks. You imbecile. Really? Goodness gracious.
Cares about views. I don't care, about views.
Oh, good, because this video you made about 11 months ago hasn't got any, has it? I wonder why. Maybe it's because people understand how limited and destitute you are, perhaps. I'm just guessing now. I thought it was acceptable from watching your stuff a bit, James. That's what you do. You just guess about stuff. Just suit yourself. You just guess about things that you want to sell people unnecessary supplements to solve problems that don't exist or that can't be shown to exist. Okay.
just care about actually understanding what is the healthiest diet for myself and my followers.
Yeah, I would suggest any of James' followers that actually want to listen to someone who actually knows what he's talking about, they should probably stop following James and come and follow me instead, because, well, I'm going to show why. I keep saying I'm going to, but it's, I'm just trying to keep you interested while he waffles on inanely until he finally gets to the part where I get to absolutely eviscerate him on the basic physics and the basic first principles. Come on, James, get to it, please.
And that is why I've brought up these studies and this point. So,
but you haven't brought up any points, James. You've given us your opinion. You've given us your frankly ill-educated opinion. You've given us your frankly ridiculous opinion. You've lied repeatedly, full-faced lies repeatedly. You've demanded things that you have no right to demand, and you've just made yourself look a bit of a fool because you've just claimed that association is causality in a tacit fashion, which makes you look a bit of a fool, doesn't it? And if you don't understand why that's so, then again, I would probably get back with that school that issued your PhD and ask them why they didn't teach you that, because every other school in existence is teaching that in the first half hour. Okay?
Number one, where is your proof that the calcium loss shuts off?
Well, you've already asked that 3 or 4 times, James, in this video alone, and you're going to get the same answer again. I do not need to give you proof of anything whatsoever. I've made no positive claims of any kind. If you think it's not going to shut off for some reason, James, you're speculating that a problem that may or may not have been identified in a very poorly disciplined study using a very questionable method of measurement in the first place, if you're thinking that's going to continue, you are required to prove that that is so. Unfortunately, there is no data that you can tap because there are no such studies, ergo, you still lose, son. We're done with that. So number 1, dealt with. What's next? What's number 2?
Where's your proof of that?
Again, same question. Repeating yourself because you're desperately scrabbling, waiting for your brain to catch up. The answer is still the same. Quiet, I don't need to provide you with a scrap of proof because I haven't made any claims. You're making claims. You need to support your claims with proof. You can't. You lose still. Okay? Why can't you understand this? This isn't difficult, is it? It is. Please comment under the video and tell me that it's not difficult to understand why James has this ass about face.
Yeah.
Right, what's number 2?
You have one.
Number 2 is a smacky noise with your mouth. That'll clearly make your point if you make more smacky noises, James. Absolutely. I know I mentioned it 3 times. My bad.
Number 2, I showed several studies also confirming negative calcium balance.
No, you didn't. You showed several studies that purported that. You didn't sit down with me and analyze those measurement techniques at all, their flaws, their foibles, their limitations, any of that whatsoever. We didn't discuss the statistical power of those studies. We didn't look at what populations were involved. We didn't analyze the studies at all because you don't have the testicular fortitude to sit down with me and have that discussion, James. So you haven't proven a damn thing there. And also, given that there are no studies that prove anything whatsoever still, because your very existence is metaphysical, James, I'm sorry to say, son, that you're out of your depth with me. Sorry about that. Okay? What's next?
Pudding people. They started in positive when they started consuming.
Which people, James? You said people. Okay, which people were they? Let's talk about that population, shall we? No? Okay, right. Well, you just want to be a propagandist then, do you, James? You don't want to be a scientist because scientists analyze studies. We can have a collegial discussion about the flaws and foibles of your studies, if you like. Any day of the week, twice on Sundays. That'd be awesome.
A high animal protein.
Have your people call my people. These are my people. I know you've acquainted with him already. He's not me, by the way. Can you see this? See, look, see? I'm me, he's him. See that? Different people. He's not even a people. He's a stuffed bear that you're also afraid of. So afraid of you've blocked them on the old channel there. And then you unblocked him. And then he blocked you because you kept calling him me. You didn't respect his identity. You're a bigot, James, as well as a liar. That's sad for you, isn't it? Okay, what's next? What's number 3?
Protein not offset by some type of base.
Okay, what's a base, James? Define base for me. There is an accepted view in chemistry of what a base is. Does that make it correct? And is it backed by basic first principles of physics? That's something that, as a scientist, you should be prepared to discuss with me, someone who does understand this very, very well. Because you're still now talking about an acid which still doesn't exist, James. We've already covered this. I don't know how many times, not just in this video, but in multiple videos I made responding to your excremental postulist nonsense, James. We are still not producing nor excreting any acid whatsoever. The laws of physics determine this absolutely. The laws of physics don't need your permission or your acquiescence or your agreeance of that fact. It's still a fact. Okay, so I don't know why we're even discussing base, because there's still no acid. What's next?
That it put them in negative calcium balance.
Again, according to whom, on the basis of what measurement technique? Which people, by the way? What population were they? Still. Let's talk about that. No, you just want to propagandize. Okay.
4 of those studies show that. 2, based on estimations of about a third.
Estimations. Scientists don't estimate, James. They measure things. Okay. Whoops.
30 to 40% bioavailability of the calcium would also throw them in negative calcium balance.
Oh, right. So that's an estimation. That's a mechanistic speculation based on an estimate. Good. Okay. Well, we're not really interested in that, James. What we're interested in is hard health outcomes in real free living human beings in the real world over multiple decades, because that's the claim you're making. Do you have any of that? Still no. Okay, good.
About 68 to 100 milligrams. So they were very likely a negative calcium balance.
Very likely. Very likely, you say. That's an opinion, isn't it? Okay, so mechanistic speculations, opinions, false statements around the existence of an acid that isn't extant in biological aqueous solution in humans at physiological pH ranges, lies about what I've said repeatedly, cope and more cope, but no substance. Let's get to the science.
So that's 6 studies essentially showing negative calcium balance eating
over short periods of time, small-scale studies at large, poorly disciplined at best, with very questionable measurement techniques at best. None of them able to be extrapolated over any period of time longer than the longest one of those studies, James, which was 1 year. Not 1 year and 1 day, just 1 year. Was there any meaningful loss of bone mineral density over 1 year in that population? And if so, how was that measured? And should we talk about who that population was and why that was an issue, likely? No, you just want to say,
I've shown 6 studies.
You haven't shown any studies, James. You've named a few studies by the names of their authors, but you haven't cited a damn single one of them. Not in this video, and this video needs to stand alone by itself. Even better, why don't you bring your 6 studies to me so that we can sit down face to face on camera and have a discussion about your studies? That'd be great. It'd be a learning experience for everybody, but mostly for you. Okay, what's next?
Eating a high animal protein diet, which you've never addressed with your followers.
I don't need to address that with my followers, James.
The main key, too, is that you were, in your videos, your first couple of videos, you were saying that I was wrong based on Stewart's model. You never made it clear that Stewart's model is just a construct and a theory.
Yeah, everything's a construct and a theory, though, James, isn't it? Including, as I've said, your objective reality and mine. Objective reality itself, that's metaphysical still. The thing that makes the Stewart model vastly superior to your hackneyed old view that you were taught by your professor, I'm sure, who was equally limited as you are, obviously, and unable to think critically for him herself as you are, obviously, James, the thing that makes the Stewart model better is this. It's consistent in every way with basic first principles of physics and chemistry. It's both internally and externally valid and accurate by its very construction, 100% accurate by its very construction, and it's unassailable by the likes of you, James, mostly Well, it's unassailable to anybody, but it's unassailable to the likes of you, James, mostly because you're 50 IQ points short of being able to understand the thing. Sadly. Again, not a judgment on you, just the facts. But let's go over it.
Theory can't prove anyone wrong. So
Well, I don't need to. Other than to prove you wrong about things that we absolutely do all agree upon, like whether or not there is acid in our urine. There still isn't, James. We all accept, all of those of us that understand basic chemistry at all, we all accept that sulfuric acid, so-called, if you put sulfuric acid into a solution at a pH anywhere in the physiological range of human urine, it will be 100% dissociated immediately, i.e., it will be sulfate, and then there's some hydrogen ions, so-called, to account for, apparently, in some way, which we'll get to still. Stick around to the end. This is the important bit.
your model that, bicarbonate...
It's not my model, James. It's not called the Bart Kay model, is it? It's called the Stewart model, after the late Peter Stewart, who proposed it correctly. Because he, like me, was a gentleman with an IQ about 50 points or so higher than yours, who was able to think critically, able to understand the physics involved here, and able to apply them correctly, unlike yourself. Sorry about that. Not sorry.
It is a
Yeah, I love that noise that you make with your mouth, though, James. It really makes your point much clearer. Whoops, 4 times.
dependent variable. It doesn't prove me wrong. It does not prove me wrong in the slightest. A theory cannot prove...
No, but basic physics do, James, on a number of points. Ergo, your credibility, very, very limited indeed. Subterranean, in fact. For a start, you can't even get it right about what's extant, what is there in the urine. You say there's acid there, for example. There still isn't. Doesn't matter how many times you say there is, it still isn't there. You're about to start talking, I'm sure, about ammonia, which, again, because of the physiological pH of urine, does not exist in urine. It cannot exist in urine. It is immediately proton bound, they call it. It becomes NH4 plus ammonium immediately. You cannot add ammonia to a solution at that pH. It will not still be ammonia. The second you add it, it's immediately something else because of the laws of physics, which are still a thing, James, whether you like those laws or whether you don't. Sorry, not sorry.
anyone wrong or anything wrong.
That's great. Neither can you, James. Existence is metaphysical. That's great. All we can do is argue the toss backwards and forwards on various points, which we have been doing. It would be much better, though, James, to do it face-to-face live on camera once you've grown a set. That'd be awesome. Anytime you like. Here it is again.
The other statements too made, like ammonia is not produced in the kidneys.
Here we go. Amazing, isn't it? It still isn't, James. For the same reason that acid doesn't exist in the urine either. Those are the laws of physics still. Any competent chemist will tell you that I am correct. Look at the K value of ammonia / ammonium. The K value of that reaction, that equilibrium reaction system. It will tell you that at physiological pH, it's 100% NH4 plus ammonium, which is not ammonia, James. Still, no matter how many times you say it is ammonia, it still isn't. In the same way that no matter how many times you say sulfate is sulfuric acid, James, it still isn't. Okay? Never mind those hydrogen ions. We'll deal with those in a bit. Still.
100% ammonia is produced in the kidneys.
100% no, it isn't, James. Still, the laws of physics are not with you on this. I'm sorry. Not sorry. It's just a fact. You're wrong. Absolutely, unassailably wrong according to our understanding of physics as it stands. Okay?
In fact,
if you say in fact, James, it makes it true, does it? No.
Many papers have shown...
No papers have shown. No.
That about 80% of the ammonium that hits the...
There we go. That's what it is, ammonium. There we go. And yes, ammonium is produced by the kidneys. Yes, it is. I've never said otherwise. What I've said, quite correctly, James, is that the kidneys do not produce ammonia because that is physically impossible. the homeostatic mechanism of the human organism restrains the possible range of the urine pH to such a level that ammonia cannot exist there. Why? Because it's toxic, and ammonium isn't. It's amazing how that works, isn't it? It's called homeostatic mechanism. It's the body having evolved a process by which it can protect itself from a toxin by absolutely preventing any possibility that it can exist there. All right? Sorry about that. Again, not sorry.
The collecting duct in the urine comes from the secretion of ammonia.
No, it doesn't, James. Still, it's still ammonium as soon as it's put there because of the laws of physics. Still, they still apply, whether you like that or not. Still, sorry.
Hydrogen ions from the loop of
hydrogen ions now, you say? No, son, no. Again, hydrogen ions do not exist in aqueous solutions at physiological pressures and temperatures. That's a fallacy, James. I know it's a convention to refer to hydrogen ions in aqueous solution. I understand that's a convention. That doesn't mean it's correct. It isn't. They do not exist there. We're talking about hydronium, which is a different thing. A spade is a spade, James. And an arrogant little pissant is an arrogant little pissant, James. Okay?
80% of the...
This is what I'm talking about. James does not have the intellect to follow this discussion. All he has is this ability to be a one-trick pony and mindlessly, repeatedly regurgitate the same fallacious bollocks, no matter how many times he's corrected, in fact, according to basic physics, which is a thing. Still. Go on though, James. Prove me wrong. Buffoon.
Ammonium is coming from the ammonia.
No, it isn't still. It's produced as ammonium because of the laws of physics still, James. No matter how many times you say otherwise, you're still in the wrong here. Still.
So yes, you do produce more ammonia, which...
No, you still don't, James. None at all, still. Under any circumstances. That would be toxic. That's why the kidneys don't do that. Because of the physical constraints of the local pH of the solution of the urine, which is homeostatically controlled precisely in order to prevent that from occurring. Still, sorry about that. Not sorry.
Which is a toxic substance in the kidneys when you eat a high animal protein diet.
No, it's not, James. Still, it's not there. It would be toxic were it there, but it is not there. Still.
You said that was incorrect.
It is incorrect, and I think I've been very clear as to my reasons for that. And I think you'll find if you go and talk to any competent chemist whatsoever, James, they'll back me up on that. What is the K value of the ammonia-ammonium equilibrium interaction, James? Is it 2 points higher than the local pH of the urine throughout the entire range of urine? Yes, it is. We're finished with that. You're wrong. Demonstrably, absolutely wrong. In fact, according to what we understand to be facts about physics. Okay? Not even up for debate. You are wrong. Deal with it, son. Get your ego under control. It's ridiculous.
Show me the papers that ammonia is not formed in the kidneys.
I don't need to show you a paper, James. All I need to do is refer you to any textbook that will give you the K value of the ammonia-ammonium equilibrium interaction. And that will back me up 100%. You are wrong. No paper is required. Buffhead. Child. Imbecile.
100% is, again.
No, 100% still isn't, James. No matter how many times you say otherwise, you are still wrong.
80% of the ammonium.
There is no ammonia produced in the kidneys still. Okay? Let's move on, for God's sake.
That hits the collecting duct is coming from ammonia.
No, it isn't, James, still.
A toxic substance.
Yeah, it would be if it was there, but it still isn't. No, you're still wrong, James. You're still an imbecile. You still don't understand basic physics or basic chemistry. There it is. No amount of arrogantly, insolently claiming otherwise will change the facts on this. It's just stunning, isn't it, kids?
And that is produced in a much higher amount when you eat a high animal protein diet.
No, it isn't still. More ammonium is, absolutely. And that's fine because that's not toxic.
Now, you like to
I love that noise though, James. Make it again.
say offset by what base? What are you referring to as a base?
That's right. So explain that to us.
It's not sodium.
No, I never said sodium is a base, James. I never said so. That's another lie that you've just made. You've just claimed I said something I haven't said again. No. What I've said is sodium, if it is added to a solution without a negating negative charge, leaves an unnegated positive charge in the pool to which it's just been added, and that drives down the effective activity of the hydronium ion, which is the thing that pH measures. Okay, not its concentration, by the way, which is a different discussion, perhaps for a different day. That occurs according to the law of electroneutrality, James. Whether you like that or not, it's still a law, it's still a thing. It's a working example of the law of conservation of energy, which is also questionable, by the way, but that's also definitely for another day. However, in practice, in the real world, in observations that we make in chemistry, the law of conservation of energy is a thing, and it does absolutely provide the reasoning for this to occur. The problem is you can't understand it because you're working from a standpoint of conservation of mass. And you're working from a standpoint of thinking of the pH as being a measurement of the concentration, which it isn't, of protons, which it isn't. It's neither of those things. It's because you're so destitute of understanding of what is even being discussed here. That's the problem. Okay? But let's get to that.
Sodium and sodium bicarbonate is not the base. But
Again, sodium and sodium bicarbonate, James, are not the same thing, are they? They're different things. If you're talking about sodium bicarbonate being added to a solution, here's what happens. You add sodium bicarbonate to the solution. The sodium and bicarbonate dissociate into their respective ions. Bicarbonate is volatile via the bicarbonate buffering equilibrium system and exits the system at a rate determined by Le Chatelier's principle, another law of the universe that is inviolate and true, whether you like it or not still, James. That leaves the sodium ion behind, unnegated in this case, and it is that which drives down the activity of the hydronium ion in the solution, i.e. the pH, according to the law of conservation of electroneutrality. Still, the fact that you are lacking the intelligence and comprehension to understand that is your issue, son, and not mine. It's still a fact. It's still a demonstrated fact. It's still internally and externally consistent with observations, unlike your hackneyed old view that you're talking about concentrations, which we're not, and that one of those things, the concentrations of which we're looking at is hydrogen ions, which we're not. That's your problem, son. You need to educate yourself on basic chemistry. Sorry about that, not sorry.
Bart, okay? And prove me, show me how sodium is a base. Okay.
Well, I didn't say it's a base, James. What I said is it drives down the activity of the hydronium ion, thus increasing the pH, reducing the acidity. And I said that, James, because it's a fact. Still, I didn't mention the word base at any point or any time. The fact that the only way that you can comprehend acidity is via the old hackneyed acid-base model, the construct, that's your failing, son. That's not my failing. That's your failing. Again, just like you're failing to understand that there's no acid in the urine, that we do not produce ammonia, and that I never made a positive claim about whether or not you or anybody else will be fine over any period of time based on anything they eat, no matter how many times you lie about that, James. Still. Okay? What's next?
Okay.
Now, it's not okay, James, for you to sit there and lie and to suggest that you know more about this than I do, when it's quite clear and patent to anyone with more than 3 functioning brain cells that that's not so. What's clear and patent to everyone watching this video, James, is that you have a very, very serious ego problem. And the issue, as I've said, is that you need to keep your mouth shut and open your ears, and you might learn something, okay?
And I'm going to show you how physiology works.
Oh, yeah, James is going to show me how physiology works. Well, anyone that's watched this video to this point, James, I think has already got a clear idea who it is that understands how physiology works. Because, James, you think we're producing acid, which we're not. You think that fluids contain hydrogen ions, which they don't. You can't understand the difference between who's making a positive claim and who isn't. You're a liar. You're a coward. And you've got a very serious ego problem. Sorry about that. Not sorry. What's next?
How bicarbonate is the base.
But it isn't still, because bicarbonate is a dependent variable in terms of its concentration in the solution still, according to Le Chatelier's principle, which is still a thing, whether you like it or not, still. And it's still consistent with first principles of science and everything else, as is the entire Stewart model. It's above reproach, James.
Okay, when you consume sodium bicarbonate. And you were trying to say, well, what happens when you consume bicarbonate?
That's right. What happens? Well, I just explained what happens.
In the stomach, it turns to CO2. So how is it the bicarbonate?
It does, according to Le Chatelier's principle, through the bicarbonate buffering system, which, James, is still a thing, whether you like it or not. Still.
Okay.
It's not okay, James, for you to sit there and try and send me up while showing that you don't understand that the bicarbonate buffering system is a thing. You need to understand that it's a thing, because it is still, that Le Chatelier's principle applies to equilibrium systems, which it does, still, James, whether you like that or not, and that the Stewart model is still above reproach by the likes of you, who can't understand the thing, as I say, James, because you're about 50 IQ points short of being able to do so, still.
Look up the alkaline tide, Bart.
That's somebody's opinion, James. It's a hackneyed old opinion put together by someone who does not understand the basic physics at play here. That will not establish anything whatsoever. It does not refute what I've just said, which remains an absolutely unassailable set of facts that I've just given you, still.
If you want to understand how this works physiologically.
I do understand, James, much, much better than you do, clearly. The sad fact of the matter is that you really genuinely think you understand this better than I do. It's laughable, son. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. All you're doing is sitting there making an absolute fool of yourself, boy.
When you consume bicarbonate in the stomach.
Yes, you don't consume it in the stomach, by the way.
Yes, you will produce CO2, right? It combines
Right, well, there you go. I'm correct, and you're incorrect. You've just admitted it. Thank you very much. There we go.
with the hydrogen.
No, it's got nothing to do with hydrogen, James. Nothing at all to do with hydrogen. Absolutely no comprehension of the basic physics and chemistry here at all, as I've been alluding to all along, and he's finally got to it. There you go. He's proven my point. Wrong again, James. What's next?
We're going to deplete the hydrogen concentration.
No, there's no hydrogen concentration in the stomach. None at all. What are you talking about, James?
But the parietal cell is going to compensate for that. Okay.
Right. So what you're trying to allude to is, if you attempt to perturb the acidity of the stomach, the physiology of the human body will resist your attempt to perturb that. And nobody said otherwise. I certainly didn't. It does.
Okay. This has been proven in animal studies.
No, nothing's been proven in any studies whatsoever, James. Nothing at all. Reality itself is still metaphysical. You are, any time you want to use the word proof, James, you are out with the acceptable epistemological standards, because it still doesn't exist. Okay?
It compensates for that.
You said that already, not 2 seconds ago.
So you've depleted the hydrogen ions.
No, you haven't, because there weren't any there in the first place, James. Still, hydronium ions exist in the stomach, as well as other fluid pools. There's a higher activity of the hydronium ion, the thing that we parsimoniously refer to as concentration of H+. It's nothing of the sort still. The fact that you don't actually understand what it is even is what your problem is, James. That's why you can't comprehend how you've got this so badly wrong. Okay? It's your lack of education in this field that is the problem here.
So now the parietal cell is going to secrete the hydrogen ions.
No, it's not, because there are no hydrogen ions in the stomach still. And that's not what's being secreted into the stomach that causes the activity of the hydrogen ion to increase. Let me give you a hint. Let me help you. The thing that causes the activity of the hydrogen ion in the stomach solution to increase is the pumping into that space of chloride anions. Okay? It is that which drags up the activity of the hydrogen ion disparately from the now completely uncoupled activity of the hydroxide ion, thus affecting the thing that we parsimoniously refer to as the pH of that solution. It becomes more acidic, is the label we give that. All right? It's about the rates of reactions, the Gibbs free energy in the system. It's about the exchange of pseudophotons in the stomach. Okay? You need to educate yourself on this, because frankly, you're just going off half-cocked on a hackneyed old model, which is parsimonious description, a fallacious parsimonious description of acid and what they call base physiology. Okay? It's not reflective of reality. I'm sorry. Not sorry.
To get the acid back up, right? To get the hydrogen ion back up to where...
No, it's still not hydrogen ions, James. No matter how many times you say hydrogen ions, it still isn't. It's still a fallacy. You're still wrong on that. And I will correct you every time, still. Because it's still absolutely, demonstrably not what is present in the stomach.
What happens in the parietal cell when you secrete the acid from...
You don't secrete acid, James. The acid, so-called, that you would be referring to in this situation would be hydrochloric acid, HCl. However, what is the pK value, James, of hydrochloric acid? Is it more than 2 points lower than the physiological pH of the stomach compartment throughout the entire range, the physiological range? Yes, it is. Ergo, what is in there is chloride anions. Okay? For goodness sake, this isn't difficult to understand, except for someone like you who is so limited as to think along the old terms of the old parsimonious, fallacious way of describing this, where you think you have to account for all the mass, because you think we're talking about concentrations, when we're not. We're talking about the activity, the flux rate of a reaction, which is said to produce these ions existing, each one of them, if they do at all, which is not determined, James, for less than 10 to the negative 6 seconds, less than 1/millionth of 1 second, before it in turn reacts with something of the inverse electrochemical charge, thus meaning that the concentrations of H plus and OH minus, parsimoniously described as concentrations, they're not, they are uncoupled. Okay? A lot of times you'll see this reaction, this equilibrium thing, this auto-ionization of water drawn out as H2O goes to H plus plus OH minus and back again. That's false, James. That is not a description of reality. That's an accountancy technique. Okay? What's happening is two H2O react together to produce one H3O plus and one OH minus, if that's indeed what actually is happening. And that happens such that those two ions produced exist for less than a millionth of a second. And it's probably even less than that. The only reason I'm saying less than a millionth of a second is because that's the quickest technology we currently have to trace what's going on here. It's all about Gibbs free energy. It's about the pseudophotons. It's about exothermic, endothermic. It's about Le Chatelier's principle. It's about the conservation of energy, James. It's not about the conservation of mass because, well, James, that's not a thing. Mass is not conserved. Okay? Goodness sake. This is what I'm talking about. James lacks the IQ points to understand, comprehend this, or to even understand that everything he's been taught by his clearly very limited professor was a complete fallacy and not up to it. It's sad, but it's a fact.
Carbonic anhydrase. You reabsorb bicarb. Hence, essentially sodium bicarbonate is 100% bicarbonate bioavailability from the alkaline tide.
No, it's not, James. Still, that's just nonsense. That's just noise based on a completely fallacious model which does not describe objective reality as we understand that to be. It's a parsimonious, hackneyed old model. It's wrong. It's demonstrably wrong. It's out with the laws of physics. Sorry, not sorry.
In other words, yes, bicarbonate is the base.
No, it isn't. It's not at all. Bicarbonate, in terms of its concentration, is a volatile thing in the solution, and it will exit at a rate determined by Le Chatelier's principle, leaving behind the unnegated positive sodium charge, if it was sodium bicarbonate that was ingested, and it's that which drives down the activity, of the hydronium ion still. No matter how many times you say that's not so, or it's different from that, James, it isn't. Still, that's what happens. Okay?
Show me and prove to me how sodium is the base.
I just did, James. I just explained it to you, but sadly, the reason that you can't hear that is because you won't shut your f***ing mouth long enough to hear it. Neither do you have the intelligence to actually grasp what I just said, I'm quite sure. That's your problem. Again, not a judgment on you as a person. I'm sure you're a perfectly nice person in your life. Well, I'm not really sure of that, but that's for another day.
It is not.
Well, you saying something is or is not so, James, is something that we can clearly already not rely upon, because you've made a number of statements of so-called fact in this video alone, which are demonstrably incorrect, in fact. So why would we trust anything you say is a fact, James? Why would we?
You also said in your video that chloride, because if chloride goes higher and you're increasing the negative charge.
That's right, yes.
That yes, it will pull protons out of the solution.
No, I said that increases the activity of the hydronium ion, precisely in order to maintain electron neutrality. It's nothing to do with accounting for mass still, James.
Does no such thing.
It does, James, whether you like that or not still. The model is internally and externally consistent. It's above reproach of those folks like yourself who are so destitute of comprehension and so lacking in IQ points that you can't even grasp it. It's unfortunate for you, but it's still a fact. You don't need to accept that fact for it to be a fact. It's still a fact.
You are not pulling protons out of the solution.
I never said you were. I might have suggested that it tends to be spoken about that way, but that's an incorrect way of describing it. If you actually had the ability to shut your mouth long enough and open your ears long enough to listen to the whole thing, you would have got that. Well, Again, if you had 50 more IQ points than you've got.
You may dissociate water and form a proton.
No, you don't form protons by dissociating water, James. That is not an apt or accurate description, I should say, of the objective reality of what occurs regarding the auto-ionization of water. That is false, James. I've explained that already. More than once, not just in this video. I've explained it multiple times. The reason being that I understand this very, very well, and you do not, still.
But what happens when you dissociate water too, Bart? You form
Yes.
an equimolar amount of hydroxide ions.
Right. And how long do they exist for before they react with something else? And do both hydroxide ions and hydronium ions react with anything that is also in that solution that is not its partner that it came from at that time? Anything that's of the opposite electrochemical charge, it will react with, won't it, James, within a millionth of a second, and probably a lot quicker than that. Ergo, you can absolutely drive down the activity effectively of, or the flux rate effectively of what's parsimoniously thought of as the concentration of those things. You can affect H plus and OH minus independently. Were that not so, there would always be equal amounts of both, and there would be no such thing as acid-base. Why is that hard to understand? Other than because the model you've been taught doesn't understand that, and you don't have the critical thinking skills to be able to assess new information, accurate information, internally and externally valid information, brought to you by the late Peter Stewart and not me. I wish I'd invented it or thought of it. I didn't. Peter Stewart did. Okay? It's correct, James. It's demonstrably correct. It's in line with physics, energetics, first principles, and everything we hold dear, those of us who actually are competent scientists. You suggesting that water dissociates into H plus OH minus is wrong, James. That's not what happens. That's not reality. That's a model. Okay? Is this going up some flagpoles? I hope so.
Minus. So 1 minus for 1 plus. So tell me how you are changing the positivity by dissociating water.
I just did, James. The problem is you're unable to shut your mouth long enough to hear it. While ever you're spouting off what you think you know, there's no possible way that you can learn something that you didn't know before. Shut your gob long enough to consider what I've just said and understand the truth of it, and then come and apologize to me publicly. And your followers, whoever they might be, those people who are so lacking to follow you, and then shut your channel down because you've been humbled, son. You've been made a fool of. Well, you've made a fool of yourself. I haven't done anything. I've just pointed to it. Quite rightly, because you're a fool. You're an arrogant, insolent, ill-educated fool who doesn't understand reality, physics, and chemistry. I think I've covered it quite well in this video, but there's still quite a bit left. Goodness, how much more could you have to say? Is there anything that you haven't already said and already made a mistake about that's any different in the last third of this video? I wonder. Let's see.
Add protons, because you are going to add the exact same amount.
So you're just repeating yourself. You've already been shown in the last few minutes how it is that you're wrong. I've already shown in the last few minutes how you're wrong. I don't need to do it again. It's already been done. So just repeat yourself. You're still wrong, James. Still.
Hydroxide ions.
Still wrong.
So you're...
Love that noise, by the way, James. Keep making that, though. That really makes you much more likable.
We've been waiting over a month for you to explain how the Stewart model explains acidosis.
Well, I've explained it to you. I don't know how many times, James, in videos. The problem is you're not watching them or listening. Perhaps you should come and face me like a man, throw a set, and let's have a little discussion, or probably quite a big discussion, on camera, where I'll make these points to you again and see if you can assail them, because you can't. They're all based in basic first principles in physics, still.
Please explain to me how
I just did, James. Repeating yourself won't make any difference. I still just did.
chloride in the increase in the minus charge
I just did, James, still.
is increasing the proton concentration.
It's not concentration, it's the effective activity of that particular flux rate is what it is. It's the activity of the ion, not its concentration, still.
But in doing so, thereby doing that, is increasing the overall positive charge to offset the negative chloride.
Okay, well, I've explained it. You're just too stupid to understand it.
When you are forming an exact same amount
That's not my fault, James. That's your fault.
of hydroxide ions.
Or failing rather than fault. It is partly your fault, and the part that makes it your fault is because you won't shut your mouth. Ergo, you can't possibly hear what's being said.
Laughable.
What's laughable, James, is you thinking for a second that you have a better handle on this than I do. Anyone that watches this video dispassionately, without any opinion about either one of us, from start to finish, will see which one of us is able to point to the basic physics and principles underpinning his argument. It's me. It's not you, James. I'm sorry. Not sorry.
Laughable. I want to hear your explanation for that.
Well, then shut your mouth, James, and you might be able to once you've gained about 50 IQ points, I would suggest, still.
Okay.
Okay, well, there you go. I think I've covered that. Yeah, but keep making that noise, though.
So, several things that we've proven incorrect with Bart.
No, you haven't, James. You haven't proven anything whatsoever. You've given us your opinion, your arrogant, insolent, ill-educated opinion. You've shown us your destitution of comprehension of basic physics, basic chemistry, and basic reality, as well as the epistemological standards and disciplines of science, as well as your destitution of being a decent human being who's able to have a conversation about what was said without lying about it or misrepresenting what the other person said with malice aforethought to try and win points in a straw man fashion, which, as I said, only reflects poorly on you, son, not me. What's next?
One, we know high animal protein diets absolutely leads to harmful effects.
No, we don't know that, James. That's false. There is no evidence extant anywhere on this planet that can point to that at all. None. That is another lie. We don't know that at all.
Regards to negative calcium balance,
No, not at all, James. Still.
shown increased markers of bone breakdown.
Markers, you say. We're not interested in markers, James. We're interested in hard health outcomes. Have you got any data on that? No? Oh, well, sit down. Be quiet.
And decreased markers of bone formation.
Markers, not interested. Show us hard health outcomes, James. Or sit down and be quiet.
He says they're markers, so whatever. But in my opinion, when you talk about a negative...
Yeah, opinion, James. Opinions are just like anal orifices. Almost everybody's got one, and at any given time, it's almost certainly full of shit. We're not interested in your opinion. We're interested in what can be established empirically. Okay? And you haven't established anything empirically. What you have established, absolutely, is your destitution of competence in this field in the exact fashion I've just described.
calcium balance, and you have significant...
Okay, so do you have anything to say that you haven't already said and you haven't already been completely shown up on? Because just saying calcium balance, according to whom, on the basis of what? How many studies? What sample sizes? What statistical power? What was the measurement technique? Let's analyze these studies and see what was going on there, and then throw it all away anyway, because there are no studies longer than 12 months. Ergo, you cannot extrapolate or make a prognostic statement about 1 year and 1 day, let alone 10 years or 100. Okay? We're done with that still. That was dealt with at the beginning of the video.
Increased markers of bone breakdown.
Still talking about markers. We're still not interested, James.
And decreased markers of bone formation.
Still not interested.
That is a problem.
No, it isn't, James. Markers are not a problem. Hard health outcomes are a problem for people. Do you have any data on that? No, still? Sit down and be quiet then, boy.
That is definitely a problem.
No, again, definitely. That's a statement of fact that you've just made there. Can you support that with anything? No? Sit down and be quiet, boy. Make that noise again, though, because that's important.
Okay, so we have human clinical studies showing the negative calcium balance and the increased breakdown.
Oh, my God, seriously? Have you been studying with Dr. Saives, the king of self-repetition? Still wrong, James. Still in error. Still not interested. You still don't have any data on heart health outcomes in human beings over any period of time, do you? No. Sit down and be quiet, boy.
Markers and decreased bone formation markers.
Okay, sit down and be quiet, boy.
You can say so what, but in my opinion,
Again, we've covered opinions. And yours is jam-packed to the gums full of shit.
As a person that is consuming high amounts of animal protein, that would be concerning to me.
Well, you can be concerned all you like, James. That doesn't mean the rest of us should be. Because there's no reason for us to be. It's just your anxiety and fear, or the anxiety and fear that you're trying to instill in people so that you can sell them supplements that they don't need, actually, is more to the point. But that's for another day.
And again, you made the positive claim that...
No, I didn't, James. Still, you're a liar. Still. Pathetic, James. It's desperate. It's cope. It reflects very, very poorly on you and your entire family. You should have been raised better. I blame your parents. Mr. and Mrs. James DiNicolantonio, no ideas? I'm ashamed of you. There you go. I brought your parents into it. I got personal. I wonder why. Maybe it's because you're so likable, James.
It's completely fine to just eat meat and associated fat.
Again, I never said that, you liar.
So...
Make that noise again, though.
We have no mechanistic idea of how...
So tell me how it is that eating a bunch of animal protein is a problem, James. Have you given us any mechanism of that whatsoever? You've made a bunch of false claims about acid, which even if they were true, and they're not, we've established that. So, why would excreting acid be a problem for our calcium balance, James? What's the connection there? I'd be fascinated to hear your ideas on that. Not really. I've heard your ideas on things and I know how useless they are, how worthless they are.
An increase in negative charge chlorides can lead to a change in positive charge for electroneutrality.
Well, again, James, it's because you don't understand it. That's not my problem. That's your problem. It's still a fact. It still works by the mechanism that I've already quite aptly explained, I think. Peter Stewart probably did a better job of it because it was him that proposed it in the first place. Maybe you should read his stuff again, or for the first time.
Please explain that mechanism.
Well, go and look up the Stewart model and study it, and you'll see, well, when you've gained 50 IQ points, you might be able to see that he's right and that you are wrong. In the meantime, there are several statements of fact that you have made that are demonstrably wrong, absolutely unequivocally wrong. I've pointed to them. That should give everybody watching an accurate gauge on which one of us is the one with the competence, I think, personally. That's just how it is, I'm sorry.
You were stating that I was definitively incorrect in your first couple of videos based on the Stewart model.
That's right. Because that is what basic first principles and basic physics tells us. The very basis of the epistemology in which we base our understanding of the universe. If you can disprove any of the first principles that underpin the Stewart model, please do, James. I'll give you a hint. If you want to disprove whether or not mass is conserved, which is the false thing that you seem to be labouring under there, maybe you should go and talk to anybody that might still be alive that was in Hiroshima, Japan on the morning of the 6th of August, 1945. They'll tell you whether or not mass is conserved. Okay, it's not. To all intents and purposes, in terms of what we're doing with the Gibbs free energy thing and the explanation for what's going on with the equilibria and the Chatelier's principle and the conservation of electroneutrality, all accepted laws, James, they're all based on the conservation of energy, which, except for one exception that we know about in the universe, is a law. And the one exception to the conservation of energy is red shift. And it probably isn't really, it's just that we don't really understand what redshift is, or we've misinterpreted it, I reckon. But we'll get to that when the physicists get to it. They're busy doing other things. In the meantime, the conservation of energy is an accepted law of the universe until proven otherwise, it does underpin the tenets of the Stewart model, and your failure to understand them, James, is your failure. Nobody else's, still. What's next?
Until I told your followers that Stewart model is a construct.
Yeah, but James, my followers don't take anything you say remotely seriously because, you see, I've instructed them as to how to think critically and how to subject anything said to them by anybody, including myself, to a test of whether or not that stands up to and is underpinned by any first principles. And your statements are not. Peter Stewart's are still. They're laughing at you, James, my followers. They're laughing at you along with me. They think this is hilarious. And all of them, even the ones without scientific training, I would suggest, James, have a higher IQ than you do, despite your so-called training and your success in publishing peer-reviewed articles, which, once again, well done on, by the way.
A theory, and hence cannot prove me incorrect.
Yes, but everything's a theory still, James. There is no proof of anything, including your objective reality still, James. So that's a point that falls flat on its face too. What's next?
So how have you proven me wrong?
Well, James, you said we produce acid. No, we don't. Fact. You said we produce ammonia. No, we don't. Fact. You said our stomach contains hydrogen ions. No, it doesn't, James. Fact. You said sodium ions can't affect the pH. Yes, they can, James. Fact. You said chloride ions can't affect the pH, James. Yes, they can, James. Fact. You said if we eat nothing but muscle meat and associated fat for years and years and years and years, we can absolutely expect a problem. You haven't established that posit, James. Fact. So I'd say all in all, James, I've proven you wrong. To the best possible capacity that anybody can prove anything, given that objective reality itself is still metaphysical. I think I win. And I think anybody with more than 3 functioning brain cells is going to agree with me and fall on my side on this. I might be wrong as to what other people's opinion might be. I've been wrong about that before, but I'm still not wrong about the facts or any of the physics. I'm still got that absolutely nailed down, unassailably, whether you like it or not, James, still. So there you go.
Show me the experimental study that proves me wrong.
I don't need to show you anything, James. You don't get to demand anything from me. I've made no positive claims. All I've done is refute your ridiculous nonsense, quite correctly.
Right?
But make that noise again, though, because that'll make your point much stronger.
You demand a 100-year study.
I demand nothing, James. I've never demanded anything from you whatsoever. You're lying again. Never have I demanded anything from you.
Thousands of twins to prove someone's point.
No, I've said that's what's required. Those are the epistemological standards, the disciplines of science, if you want to make a cause and effect inference. I've also suggested, quite rightly, that no such work exists because it cannot be done ethically, morally, practically, or financially. Ergo, my position is absolutely unassailable, and yours is not, because you're the one making the positive claim, not me, still. And lying about me making a positive claim, no matter how many times you do it, will not change the fact that I have not done so, still.
But you have no study of your own to prove your point, that fruits are terrible and that...
Again, fruits are terrible is an opinion, quite clearly. There are many reasons why I choose not to eat fruit, and I've explained them in great detail on my channel if people want to go and find out why. It contains all sorts of things that absolutely seem to be a problem. Very immediately, like, the effect that it will concomitantly have on the hepatic ATP concentration, James, immediately. thus leading to a whole bunch of ramifications of that, not to mention the purine breakdown that it causes and the buildup of, potentially problematic metabolic byproducts in that regard, like urate and stuff like that. The fatty liver disease that seems to be more likely given that situation, the pancreatic issues that you possibly don't even understand, James, because physiology is actually not your area of expertise whatsoever. That kind of stuff. Everything I say on my channel is an opinion, but it's all opinions underpinned by first principles, known, observable phenomena, James. Whereas your opinions are based on fallacies, things that are demonstrably, absolutely not true. That's the difference. Okay? Pretty straightforward, really.
Animal food with animal fat is completely fine.
Again, I've never said that. Never said that at all. Still a lie, James. No matter how many times you make that claim, it is still a lie.
You're exempt from any of the basically crazy.
Okay, now you sound like a child, son. If you didn't already. I'm not exempt from anything. The laws of physics apply to me too, James. The epistemological standards, the disciplines of science apply to me too, James. I'm not the one that's out with those things. It's you, still. You're the one making false claims, demonstrably false claims, absolutely unequivocally false claims. I'm not the one doing that because, as I said, son, I've spent 2 decades making damn sure I don't. Because much smarter cookies than you have had cracks at me. And I've learned how to avoid those problems by not making such claims, leading to people like yourself having to lie about what you're saying I've said in order to try and strawman me. It's pathetic still, and it still won't work, because anybody can actually go and check my videos and see what I actually have said. We don't need you to say, Bart Kay said this, Bart Kay said that. People can go and watch my videos and see what I did, in fact, say, and they'll see that you're lying about what I said. So it's only going to reflect even worse on you when they come back and say, he's right. You are lying, James. You are a pathetic, desperate, ego-driven little boy with a very, very serious problem on his hands. And the problem you have on your hands is you have decided very, very unwisely to attack a bloke with an intellect vastly north of your own. Again, not a judgment, just an observable, obvious fact. Okay? I hope you're nearly finished. It doesn't even look like it. There still looks like there's heaps left. God, you're probably just going to be repeating yourself in circles, aren't you, son?
The amount of evidence you are demanding from us.
I'm not demanding anything from anybody still, James. Unless you want to make a cause and effect claim, in which case I'm going to hold you to the epistemological standards required for that, just like anybody else. You can't meet that standard, ergo your positive claim about cause and effect and what we can expect is demonstrably failed. Okay? This isn't hard to grasp, is it?
But when we show you really good metabolic ward studies and
really good is an opinion, James. We've already covered opinions, haven't we? Okay, good.
And issues with that, we can't show deaths in 4 months to 12 months, of course not. But I'm showing very important biomarkers.
Again, that's an opinion. And it's not one I share. I'm not interested in biomarkers, James. I'm interested in hard health outcomes. Do you have any data on that? Still no? Still sit down and shut up.
On a mineral balance and mineral bone breakdown and bone formation markers.
Over a very short period of time, under very, very poor discipline and a very small number of people with a very poor measurement technique, James, still not interested. No matter how many times you repeat that, it still does not meet the standard required to support your posit that there's a problem. You can be as cautious as you like personally, but don't tell everybody else that they can expect a problem that you cannot support. Okay?
That are looking worse when you don't offset it with base.
No, James, you don't even understand what that is. Still, you don't get basic chemistry even. You don't even grasp what that is. You don't understand any of it. Clearly, I've covered that in great detail in this video, I think.
Yeah, base is bicarbonate and citrate.
No, it isn't, James. Still. Doesn't matter how many times you say it is, it still isn't.
Tell me what else is base. What is base then in the body if it isn't that?
James, the whole term base makes no sense. Acidity has a scale. It's parsimoniously described as a measurement of the concentration of the hydrogen ion. It's not that. That's a false description of what it is. It's actually a measurement of the activity of the hydronium ion, which is something completely different. It's a logarithmic scale that ranges from one value to another value. There's more or less acidity according to that scale alone. We don't need some other thing. What's this base thing you're talking about? It's because you don't understand basic physics or chemistry. It's because you're working from an old hackneyed model that you don't have the capacity to analyze critically, that you can't grasp this. It's still your failing, son.
I would love to know.
Well, then shut your mouth and listen to someone who understands this better than you do. That's what you need to do. Stop talking. Open your ears, open your, I was going to say mind. Open your consciousness to the possibility that you don't know everything. It's absolutely clear you don't. I've pulled you up on I don't know how many absolutely, unequivocally, definitely established fallacies in this video alone, James. Anyone that watches this will be embarrassed for you.
Also,
oh God, are you still not done? What else could you possibly have to say?
Bicarbonate is probably both a dependent
Oh God, we're back to bicarbonate again?
and independent variable.
No, it's not. It's a dependent variable. Stuart has made this quite clear. He's right, James, and you're not. Still.
It's not just a dependent, because
Yeah, it is, still.
if you want to give someone sodium bicarbonate,
Well, sodium bicarbonate and bicarbonate, James, are not the same thing, are they? Still.
you
Make that noise again, though.
can hit, it's called hitting peak alkalosis before performance. You should know.
Oh, now you're an exercise physiologist as well, James? No, you're not, son. How do I know that? Because I am one, among other things. I've studied a number of areas, James. I have terminal research degrees in more than one area, and exercise physiology is one of those. Please tell us about exercise physiology now. Goodness gracious, this boy's insolence, arrogance, and Dunning-Kruger seems to have no bounds.
This, right? You did exercise physiology.
Oh, you understand that I was an exercise physiologist, among other things, in my career in academia. Good. Then you should know that challenging me on that is just as foolish as challenging me on basic physics, basic chemistry, physiology, or any of the things that I actually am very expert in, which does include statistical inference and research design as well, by the way, James.
You can push someone's bicarbonate level well above 7.45 and out.
So you can't do it independently. You cannot independently moderate the concentration of bicarbonate in a person. It is still a dependent variable. Le Chatelier's principle still applies. The laws of physics still apply.
Out of range by consuming sodium bicarbonate, which I just explained from the
Sodium bicarbonate is not bicarbonate, is it, James? It's sodium bicarbonate. Sodium has an effect on the ability to retain or not the bicarbonate ion via its effect on the pH of the solution. Okay? Still a dependent variable. The 4 independent variables controlling the pH of all aqueous solutions everywhere in the universe at all times are the partial pressure of carbon dioxide gas, the temperature, the effective concentration of strongly dissociated ions in milliequivalents, which is referred to as the SID+, and it's called the SID+ in biological solutions because it always has a positive value in biological solutions by design. It's the homeostatic mechanism. And the fourth one is the effective milliequivalent value of the anions in the solution, which comprise almost entirely proteins, such as mostly albumin and globulins. There are other things, but their concentrations are so low as to really not be worth computationally worrying about, actually. Just those four things. They're the only four independently moderatable things that can independently moderate the pH or the bicarbonate concentration. Okay? Still a fact. You just need to learn that from the Stewart model when you've studied the thing, James, after you've gained about 50 IQ points somehow, which won't happen as long as your mouth is open and your mind is closed. Promise you that.
Alkaline tide and how sodium...
Alkaline tide is still a construct. It's still a ridiculous construct. It's still an absolute waste of space. It's just noise. It's not something that's scientifically valid or robust. The Stewart model is still.
Bicarbonate actually works physiologically.
You don't know how it works physiologically, James. You've shown that you have no grasp on how chemistry works in this video alone, quite clearly.
That is the bicarb that is driving up the bicarb, not the sodium.
Nobody said the sodium is driving up the bicarb directly, James. Nobody said that whatsoever. Another lie, or at least a complete failure to comprehend what's being said because you're too stupid, frankly. Sorry to get personal, but that's how it is. You are simply too stupid to grasp this material. Right?
And so...
Make that noise again, though, because that's really important every 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's both. It can... And the key here is that if you...
No, James. The key is the thing that opens a lock. The lock is at the top of the ladder, and you haven't got your foot on the first rung, son. You're in no position to tell us what the key is. You've never even seen the key. You're so far out in the woods here on this that it's laughable, son. It's really, really time you stopped. Really time you stopped.
You're consistently eating a high enough amount of animal protein,
How high is that?
times a day.
Who says that you need to eat 3 times a day to achieve whatever it is you're going to say next?
You're overwhelming the kidney's ability to handle that.
Who said, James? On the basis of what? Where is that coming from? Who told you that? No, you just want to say things. Okay.
That has been proven.
No, it hasn't, James. No such thing has been proven whatsoever, still. But do make that noise again with your mouth, because we love that. That's awesome. Makes you much more likable.
In balance studies.
Balance studies don't prove dick about James. Still.
That these individuals are retaining the acid.
No, they're not retaining acid, James, because there's no acid there, still. You're talking about sulfuric acid. Look at the pK value of sulfuric acid, James. It still isn't there. It's still a physical impossibility, and you still don't comprehend it because you haven't opened your ears and shut your mouth yet. That's why.
Then you have to deal with the acid in numerous ways.
No, you don't, because there's no acid there to deal with, still.
And some of those metabolic balance studies have shown significant
Yeah, make that noise, though.
losses of calcium.
Well, what's that got to do with acid, which doesn't exist, James? You haven't given us any hope of grasping any of your proposed mechanisms because you haven't given us one. You've just said acid, and calcium. One of which is not extant. There is no sulfuric acid occurring. Still. So whatever you think the mechanism of the sulfuric acid that doesn't exist causing calcium loss is, I'd be fascinated if you ever get to that. I know you're not going to, though, because there is no mechanism for it.
That could only come from the bone.
No. You're saying there's no calcium in the body that doesn't come from bones? Is there no calcium in muscles, James? You yourself admitted that I'm an exercise physiologist and should know such things, and I do. There is calcium in muscles, for example. So you're wrong. It doesn't only come from bones.
So
Do you make that noise, though?
again,
Again, so you're going to repeat yourself on something, is what that means, that we've already heard and already dismissed entirely as fallacious.
I think I'm providing a good service here.
Well, I don't, James. I think you're a fool. I think you're a buffoon, and I think you're a boy with a very serious ego problem who needs to pull his head in, quite seriously. I think you're well and truly out of your lane of expertise. It's absolutely patent that you don't understand physics, chemistry, physiological process at all. You're a laughingstock of everyone that watches my channel and anyone that watches this video. Not sorry.
In regards to and showing good evidence in human clinical studies.
You haven't shown any evidence or any studies in this video, which needs to stand alone because this is the one you're making this argument in. If you do want to bring your clinical studies to me, James, so we can go through them and litigate them and find out how poor they are, let's do that. More than happy. They also don't prove anything beyond 1 day longer than their term of study that was done. In this case, the longest one is a year. So we're still done with that because there's nothing there in terms of hard health outcomes to look at. Still.
Of the potential harm.
There's no reason to believe that even if there was an acceptable reason to believe that there really was a decent amount of calcium loss, that would continue in the same vein over any number of years. Still, James, you haven't provided any evidence that would make us feel that that's the case. Still.
Harms, and also the evidence of the harms on the bone from the Inuit.
There are no evidences of harms from diet on the bones of Inuit. Again, you've used an association as proof of causality. It's ridiculous, James. That's a schoolboy error. You're a laughingstock. You are a ridiculous child academically who needs to pull his head in. Still.
They did not have good bone mineral.
You've already said this, James. It's still an association. It still doesn't establish cause and effect. You're still a buffoon. It's not going to change. No matter how many times you say the same ridiculous nonsense over and over again, it's still ridiculous nonsense.
Content, and they had a high rate of osteoporosis.
You've already said this. He clearly has been studying with Dr. Saivez. Perhaps that's where he got the mouth clicky thing from. Who knows?
And they had a high rate of compression.
You've already said this. Remember, we dealt with it back then.
Fractures in their vertebra.
Yes, you've covered this. It proves absolutely nothing, James, whatsoever still.
So you saying that a few people have been on carnivore for 40, 50 years doesn't tell me anything.
That's right, and neither does your little anecdotes about what you say is the bone health of the Inuit. Same deal, James. Nil pois for you.
So, and you're the one claiming that it's okay to just eat meat.
Now again, James, still, no matter how many times you make that same lie come out of your rancid stinking gob, it's still a rancid stinking lie. I did not say that. Still.
And the associated fat. And I'm showing a lot of evidence to say, actually, we need to be very cautious here.
No, you're not showing any evidence at all of anything other than your theologically held belief structures based on your total inability to understand basic chemistry and basic physics, let alone physiological process, which is much more complex, many more degrees of freedom, or any of the epistemological disciplines of science. Still.
It seems like there's a lot of evidence that would suggest otherwise.
No, there isn't, James. Still. That's your opinion, and it's farcical. It's ill-educated. It's ridiculous, and you're a buffoon.
So
make that noise again, though, because that'll make your point much clearer, and it'll make us like you so much more.
I think in the end, you made a positive claim that
No, I still didn't, James. Doesn't matter how many times you say I did, I still didn't.
Incorrect based on a theory, which can't prove me wrong.
No, James. No, lie.
Yeah, the kidneys make ammonia, of course.
No, they don't, James. Still, doesn't matter how many times you say they do, they still don't. It's still against the laws of physics, whether you like those laws of physics or not. It's still a basic, well-understood chemical tenet. It still isn't correct.
Of course, yes, bicarbonate is a base.
No, it still isn't, James. No. Doesn't matter how many times you say it is, it still isn't.
I just proved and showed you how, from the physiological standpoint.
No,
how
you didn't, James, at all. You didn't prove anything whatsoever. You gave us your opinion based on your farcical understanding of chemistry and physics. which was laughable then and it's laughable now. You still didn't.
This works.
No, you didn't show us how anything works, James, at all.
Through the alkaline tide formation.
No, you still say alkaline tide. It's still a ridiculous construct put together by someone who doesn't understand any better than you do, still. Try again.
Of when you secrete hydrogen in the stomach,
You still don't secrete hydrogen in the stomach, James. That's still another farcical falsehood that you've got in your mind for some reason. That still doesn't happen.
Absorb bicarbonate. So if you deplete the hydrogen ions
So he is just repeating himself, repeating his fallacious comments from earlier, which is still wrong. So I'm still just going to say, no, James, that's false. Demonstrably false, absolutely unequivocally false from first principles and basic physical premises, laws of physics, still.
Consuming bicarbonate, you make more equimolar amount.
Oh, you're really struggling, aren't you, son? Really struggling. Clearly I've upset you. That's sad for you. Nonetheless, you made yourself a perfectly viable target by coming online and publicly making ridiculous, farcical, false statements that aren't based in reality. It's your own fault, son. Make that noise again, though. It's very important.
Can't wait to see your Stewart model acidosis approach.
Well, that would require you to shut your gob long enough. Gain about 50 IQ points so you could possibly have any hope of grasping it, and go and study the thing. It's still correct. It's still based in first principles of physics and science. It's still internally and externally consistent with reality and observation. And you just need to accept that, James. It's just how it is.
Please explain to me also how I'm wrong on my models.
Make that noise again, though.
Of how animal protein brings an acid load into...
Because it doesn't, James. I've done that, I think, in this video more than once because you've made that ridiculous claim more than once. There is still no acid produced. None at all. Those are the facts of physics. A spade is a spade. There is no acid. None at all. Still.
To the body. Are you saying it doesn't bring an acid load?
He's quick, isn't he? He's quick on the uptake, this boy. Yes, James, that's what I'm saying, because it's a fact.
And where's your proof that the body does not become overwhelmed?
Well, where's your proof that it does? You're the one making a claim that it does. I'm not making a positive claim. You are. Still. Boy.
When I clearly show that the body does become overwhelmed.
No, you didn't clearly show anything of the sort, James, at all. You gave us your opinion on that based on some very flawed, very poorly conducted, very ill-disciplined pseudo-scientific claptrappery in a small number of people over a very limited period of time. Still, those are the realities, those are the facts. Still, no matter how you give us your opinion on or give your own judgment on your own argument, which is poor, James. Piss poor at best. As I say, you would not pass my 101 course. You would be excluded from even attempting to sit it again, because it would be unethical to take your money. You have no hope of passing. You're too stupid.
Through hyperfiltration, increased loss of calcium leading to negative calcium balance.
No, James. Those are all things measured in a very questionable fashion in a very small number of people under very poor discipline for a very short period of time and does not give us any prognostic value on anything over anything like a decent period of time in any other group of people even. It's not a cut and pasteable thing. Okay? Those are the epistemological standards of science. Not my standards, the standards. You do not have any evidence to support your claim, still.
That's an overwhelming of the system. I think that's very clear.
That's not, James. The system is never overwhelmed by doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's only overwhelmed when you do something that it's not designed to do to it. And eating meat and fat is not one of those things, as evidenced quite clearly, I think, by the fact that we have been doing that for at least 110,000 years, more like the entirety of our existence most likely as a human species, 350,000, and probably 5 million before that, it seems. There are pretty good inferences on that too. But that's for another day. Perhaps you'd like to come and debate that with me too.
Where's your proof that it's not overwhelming the system?
Well, I've given you a couple of anecdotes. plus hundreds of thousands and millions of others on much shorter periods of time that don't seem to be going that way either. But I don't need to give you anything, James. I don't need to support anything because I've made no claims. No positive claims about health outcomes of any kind. You're the one making positive claims about health outcomes. Not me. Still. Boy.
The proof would have to be a complete shutoff of calcium very quickly.
No, that's your opinion. I don't need to give you proof of anything. You need to prove that it doesn't. There is no proof of that, ergo, we're at stalemate here. But you're the one making the positive claim. You're the one that can't support it. I'm not. My correct claims are that the species-appropriate, species-specific diet is hypercarnivore, as described, for the reasons I've described, and that there is no acceptable inference or proof at all that eating that diet will lead to any health complaint of any kind. Those are facts. Still.
It didn't even shut off, not even close, after 4 months.
So, according to that study, which was poor, still, who cares, James? Nobody that understands science cares about that.
Still 175 to 200 milligrams.
Yeah, you said that, James, already, remember? And it was still completely worthless then. It has no effect on the facts as I have presented them here in this discussion. Still, none at all.
Calcium being lost every single day from most.
Repeating yourself mindlessly will not affect the facts that you've been absolutely eviscerated, James, on this point by a vastly superior intellect and a vastly superior academic to yourself. Sorry, not sorry.
Of that likely from the bone.
Likely. Now, before you said it absolutely was. Now you're saying it's likely? Which was it, James? It was neither, in fact.
So I don't get it.
That's right, James. You don't get it. You absolutely don't get it. You are too stupid to get it. You're too arrogant to get it. You're completely out of your mind with rage because you've been absolutely eviscerated on this point. And instead of learning something from it, taking it on the chin and having some humble pie, you've gone into full attack mode, and the only way that you're able to even attempt to try and gouge into me is by lying. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Everyone that knows you should be absolutely ashamed of you, James. I hope this is clear to everybody. If you didn't understand it, watch it again until you do. It's worth it. This is the crux of the whole point that I'm making on my channel all the time about accurate scientific thinking and accurate communication about the science. This boy here is an example of all the things you should never do as a scientist, and is an absolute walking example of the kind of person you absolutely ought not pay any attention to and give any of your time to listen to anything he has to say. These are the reasons why I think I've been really, really clear in this video on that. There it is. I hope this has been valuable. I know it was long, but it was an important lesson. Join me next time when someone else will be wrong on the interwebs, because it does not look like slowing down anytime soon. See you then.